YouTube. All right, looks like that's doing what it's supposed to do. A couple minutes before 7, we will be getting ready to roll at about 7:02. I usually get started. All right, there's our feed to YouTube. Let me pause that so it doesn't get in my way. iPhone, is that you, Jackie boy?
I just did. Did that work?
Yep. I'm just going to change your name so I can see who it is there.
See if I
Rename.
can give you some volume here.
All right, I've just renamed it so I can tell it's you instead of just iPhone.
Turned it up. I turned it up. There you go.
Okay, no, your volume's fine. Your volume's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Looks like everything's actually working right now, so we'll just give folks a couple minutes to join us. My goodness, the weather here in Charleston has been like fall-like almost.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 100 windows open here. Let me just kind of look on my other screen, see if I've got any messages coming in. Get shout outs to anybody who want to join us.
Hey, Scott.
Hi, who? Someone said hi. I'm not sure who.
It was me.
Oh, Joey. Okay. Hey, hi, Joey. How are you?
I'm good, buddy. How about you?
Uh, I'll mention it in a moment here when I get things rolling. But I've overall pretty good. But I had a little relapse in my being sick today, so I'm kind of fragile
Oh,
this
God.
evening. Just something I go through on a regular basis. But yeah, I'll be a little
Sorry to hear
fragile.
that.
I'll try and keep things a little brief tonight for that reason. But we do have some good stuff to converse about. I'm hoping y'all got a chance, or some of you got a chance to watch that video that I linked, that YouTube video of Senator Davis introducing the Compassionate Care Act almost 2 years ago, back in January of 2019. And yeah, we're still at 7 o'clock, so I still want to give folks another minute or two. Um, but that was actually kind of interesting to me, and I've also got the link here, which I'll share. Let me go ahead and get that now. I'll share this in chat. This is the link to Senator Tom Davis's bill of SC 366, or I'm sorry, S 366, Senate Bill 366, which is the companion bill to H 3660, which was the House bill basically that mirrors this for the Compassionate Care Act. So we'll talk about that one a little bit. And get a sip before we get rolling here.
Thank you, Screen.
Oh, you're welcome, honey. I'm gonna hit your mute button for a moment, Jackie. We'll turn you. I'll have you turn back on a little bit later. All right. Looking good. We are at 7:02, so I think it's only fair to the folks that have joined in early that we get rolling. I don't want to waste your time, and anybody that joins in later can join in later. Um, of course, while killing time, I did forget to open up the one document that I always open up for these things. Open recent. There it is. I want to start our meeting by just welcoming everybody that's here with us and a quick hello and welcome to anybody that might be viewing later on our YouTube channel. This is the Sunday, September 20th, 2020 South Carolina Cannabis Conversation online. All of our meetings are an environment of education and awareness and are not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind. Go ahead and close that document there. Um, as I was kind of talking about a moment ago, I can back close that. We shared rather later than I wanted to a link to a video of Senator Tom Davis introducing the Compassionate Care Act back in January of 2019. Actually, the date I'm looking here is January 15th, 2019, which I think was the first reading of it. Um, and as we all know, we are tail end of uh, that 2 year session. So we'll get on to talking about that in just a moment. Before I get talking about that, or get us talking about it, because I'm hoping you all kind of watched it and you have some input for me as well. I do want to quick hit a screen share here. Just talk a little bit about recent news, and that should be up there okay now. Last couple weeks, we were kind of excited, hoping that we were going to have a vote on the MORE Act. Matter of fact, just a couple of days ago, we were still, I think, hoping. Let's see, this was dated on the 17th, and I think I was seeing posts on like the 17th early in the day that we were, from national, normal national to contact legislators. Let's go on this, and I see this kind of, we'll call it a mini bombshell, later on in the afternoon on September 17th, and it is basically saying that the MORE Act vote has been postponed. Um, Let me go ahead and just highlight this for my reading. So, with heavy heart, we make to this post. Despite the unprecedented level of support, it appears that prohibitionists and concern mongers have carried the day, and the House vote on the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act will not take place next week as we had anticipated. As of right now, we have received a commitment that the vote will be held this year, but we know that this promise proves little solstice at the moment. We do know this delay does not change the fact that the overwhelming majority of voters support ending the federal prohibition of cannabis, including majorities of Democrats, Independents, and Republicans. This delay does not change the fact that 33 states and the District of Columbia regulate the production and distribution of medical cannabis in a manner that is inconsistent with federal policy, and that 1 out of 4 Americans now reside in jurisdictions where adult use is legal under state law. It doesn't change the fact that voters in several states, including key electoral battleground states for both control of the presidency and the Senate, will be passing similar state level marijuana measures on election day, and there are a few of them out there. One of them, I believe, is the first where voters will vote on legalizing both medical and recreational in the same state on the same day. Um, the delay in justice is as simple as that. It's a delay. But rest assured, we will not falter in our commitment to keep fighting. For 50 years now, activists of all ages, races, genders, sexual orientations, and socioeconomic backgrounds and more have come together under banner to rally for freedom, liberty, and equal treatment under the law. So they are promising a vote on this later this year. Um, we don't know if it will be pre or post election. Um, and as they say, I think it's mostly fear mongering. Oh, I'm going to stop the share here so I can see who's ringing in. Uh, And um, I don't know how many. It mentions prohibitionists and concern mongers. I don't know how many prohibitionists are still on the left side of the aisle there. But anyway, that was just sort of prominent news this week. Something we've been pushing a lot over the past couple of weeks on this vote, and you'll see now it has been postponed. So we'll keep you up to date on that going forward. All right, screen share's turned back off. Um, I'm Let's see. Folks basically have control of your own mute button, so if you'd like to kind of chime in at any time, let me know. Or I think there's a hand raise feature if you need to, but really you're welcome to sort of chime in at any time. I did share, and I don't have my screen share on right now, but the video of Tom Davis. Heck, let me turn that back on. We're not really going to watch the video. I'm not sure what copyright issues we have on. I wouldn't assume there's really any. It's a public figure speaking on a news channel. Uh, just something. Now they might have copyright to it since they recorded it. But anyway, um, this is Senator Tom Davis, and this is the um, YouTube for the medical marijuana bill being introduced in South Carolina back in 2019. I think there's shorter versions of it. This one is the full video. It runs about 18 minutes. Um, and I watched it over yesterday for actually it was partly part of it yesterday and the rest of it this morning. Made myself a couple of notes as I went through, and thought we'd sort of start by talking about that a little bit, and then also on top of that, the promo that I used for um, I'm sorry. The promo I use for like trying to draw people in tonight mentioned, what do you visualize as the medical marijuana legalization in South Carolina moving forward. The reason I'm doing it this way is just to sort of try to contrast 2 years ago the announcement of this bill with what we're anticipating seeing in January of 2021 as the new session starts. As you may or may not know, South Carolina runs on a 2 year legislature cycle. And so that every January, every other year, they kind of, after the elections, will have new members come in, and there will be uh, all new bills being submitted. I am not sure exactly where uh, the South Carolina Compassionate Care Act bill is. Like I said, I shared in our chat window a few minutes ago the link to this document here. Um, and I know there has been some rewrites and some modifications to it. Although I'm not really seeing anything here. I thought I was under of the understanding that like smokable came out of it, and they've reduced the number uh, of qualifying conditions. I'm not sure of that. I'd have to reread through the whole thing to kind of, or through those sections of it to verify. But let's talk about what we do have for starters. And I'm going to switch back over just to sort of use this as a window. When Senator Davis first kind of came in, he started talking about uh, I think one of his key words is a bright line between medical use and recreational. Both he and Peter McCoy made it very clear in this video that neither of them have any inclination to support recreational adult use of marijuana in South Carolina, that this is specifically for medical purposes, and that the one key words or key set of words that I kind of took away toward the end of Tom Davis's intro, at somewhere around minute 8 or so, it was toward the end of his conversation. He talked about empowering physicians, um, and that was after he talked about a number of other things. Let me go over the things I sort of listed as I was talking about. The first thing I kind of picked up was that They were going to be doing live monitoring of the system by both SLED and DHEC, DHEC as they call it. I believe that's the Department of Health. I don't know what the DHEC is. I'll have to go look. Live and real time on that. I'm not really sure how comfortable I am about, and I think there was issues with the same thing in Pennsylvania about law enforcement monitoring this medical program. Um, and I think eventually in Pennsylvania they separated uh, the law enforcement monitoring completely away, so that law enforcement didn't have access to the green card system necessarily. Um, but that was one thing I found kind of concerning. Environmental control. Thank you, Teresa, for that.
Scott, if I may chime in, that was also something that I had written down as well. I just thought it was really interesting because they kept pushing, like, this is giving doctors control, giving doctors and patients the control that they need to have over their bodies. But then it was brought up multiple times that law enforcement was going to play a huge role in both coming up with the different things with this act, as well as enforcing it and making sure everything was in line. So I just found that interesting as well.
And on that same point, later on in the introduction here, he brings up law enforcement's opposition to smoking because it confuses them, or with recreational use. So they wanted to take the ability of being able to smoke it out of the a bill, or restrict that, I believe. Um, and so smoking isn't allowed. I think you were still allowed to buy flour under this bill, but you weren't allowed to smoke it. You were supposed to take it home and extract or cook or whatever you're going to do with it. Or as we advocates say, you pull your blinds and you smoke it, but don't get caught. That kind of thing. But yeah, if you live in a situation where you're in an apartment, and many of those places have connecting air systems and things like that, uh, you don't want to put yourself at risk if they have that kind of uh, restriction is the word I'm looking for. Restriction in the legislation. I don't want to really recommend anybody going and endanger themselves in that manner. But yeah, and so it sounds like they're kind of giving, although he mentioned empowering physicians, it sounds like a lot of the power already is in law enforcement's their control. Um, the other thing that I kind of hit on that he had mentioned in this, and I believe there's two circumstances of it in the actual legislation, but I just read the one. He just mentioned the one, and it was that if cannabis from the medical program is diverted out to recreational use, that would be considered a felony, punishable by a $5,000 fine and up to 5 years in jail. Felony, I want to repeat that, for diverting medical cannabis for rec use. Um, $5,000, first off, a big hit. As I mentioned to somebody in a conversation recently, it's you look at the racial disparity already in the arrest records, and when it comes to getting medical cards, it's probably not the majority of people of color that are going to be out there rushing to their doctors and coming up with whatever fees it is to get the doctor to. I know in Pennsylvania it's about $250, but you've got to go to a doctor, and again, under this Compassionate Care Act, you need to have a qualifying diagnosis, and then they have to recommend that this is something that can be used to treat it. Um, and there was another one. I think the other one that was similar to this with the felony $5,000 fine. And don't quote me on it because I may be mistaken, but I think it still is very similar to this. Was if you misrepresent yourself as a um, cannabis patient and you're not. And one of the things that I could almost see is in, a law enforcement officer having a young man off to the side of the street, pulls a little weed out of his pocket or whatever, and that young man says, "Oh, dude, that's just my medicine." Well, could potentially this law enforcement officer assume, assume that he's misrepresenting himself as a patient if he says it's just his medicine, and then again slap him with a felony and a $5,000 fine and up to 5 years in jail. Um, this is language in the existing bill that I find highly objectionable. Um, but those were the two things I picked up early, and then he did go into the conditions, and I'm going to list them briefly only because I'm going by my notes, and my notes are not complete. Uh, I just sort of gave little buzzwords. Cancer, number one. Number two, multiple sclerosis. Number three, neurological disorders, and there's probably more to that than just neurological. It may be life imposing, uh, but anyway, I think actually that may have a lot to do also with the seizure disorders and such like that. Um, the PTSD was number four. Glaucoma, Crohn's, which to me I think is an excellent add in there. I'm hoping it's still in. I've talked to more people when I've been out with our normal booth on the streets, telling me that they found relief for their digestive issues and their Crohn's disease is mentioned quite often, um, and that cannabis has given them relief. Um, I wish it would help my belly issues. I don't think it really does. Number seven, sickle cell anemia. Number eight, wasting syndrome. Number nine, severe nausea for people in hospice care. Um, Number 10, I have chronic spasm. I'm not sure what all that continue, then a scribble afterwards. Number 11, anything a doctor is prescribing opioids for that is a chronic or debilitating disease. And again, I've got that running in the background. I don't think I'm supposed to. I'll turn the share off again. Um, the opioid one again is probably I just made a couple of notes on chronic and debilitating, but a good example like I've got a surgery scheduled for I'll be getting sinus surgery done in a couple of weeks, folks. I might come back on here with big black eyes and looking kind of beat up for a week or so. But anyway, I already got my opioid prescription for it, dude. And it's not a chronic or debilitating issue, so I couldn't get marijuana under this program if that were the case. Should be able to, really. I'd rather have them prescribe something like that. But anyway, uh, those were my main takeaways. The very last note I had or for Tom Davis, my very last that I had on that was his mentioning of the empowering physicians, which I mentioned before. And I bring it up again only because it kind of it rings to me with what Virginia Normal and a lot of Virginia advocates did while they were working on passing medical marijuana in their state. They went with a program or a catchphrase of "Let doctors decide." Let the doctors decide if the cannabis can be beneficial to the patient. Let the doctors decide. Don't be letting law enforcement, don't be letting legislators. Let's go ahead and pass legislation. And when you listen to Tom Davis, that's kind of what he talks about is empowering the physicians with saying, we think this can help. And he actually mentions some research studies or what did he call them? 10,000 different extracts or something that they had gone through as in, uh, for information and just basically claiming it does have medical feasibility. Um, Peter McCoy came in at about a minute eight or so, like that, and he talked about. I actually have one thing about helping. It's all about helping. It's about helping people that need it. And he did mention he talked about his daughter. I believe he said it was his oldest daughter who does have the seizure disorder that it is beneficial for, and that is why I find actually, and I don't want to be negative to anybody. I find a lot of supporters of the medical are kind of enlightened when it comes to themselves or a friend or a family member, somebody close to them, a loved one, um, having an issue that can be helped with cannabis. And all of a sudden they're, oh, well, okay, well, yeah, maybe we should go ahead and legalize for medical use. But they'll still, keep that hard, bright line for what they call recreational use. Uh, you guys know, talking to me, I think almost all use is medicinal in some at some level. Um, so no,
Hi, I wanted to chime in real quick. Hi, everybody. I'm Vaughn Postema. It's my first time being here, so hi.
hi Vaughn.
Um, I just wanted to more so make a comment because I liked how you mentioned about the racial disparities because for me, there are a lot of people, especially in the Black and Latino communities, who cannot even afford healthcare, and so it's very disturbing that we get to this point where we want to push medical marijuana, but it still seems very selective. And I think that's another reason why, I really do care about recreational because I feel like it gives more people an opportunity to be able to access these things that are medicinal in nature. Like I definitely agree with you. And I do agree with you that when it comes to their own personal lives, it seems like that's when politicians seem to be very, very I don't know, pro green, I guess I could say, but so that's something that is very near and dear to me. And very quick background: my husband and I are actually sitting here. We have a CBD business here in Charleston that we've started, and so all of this, has been a whirlwind. But that's something that I noticed immediately about the medicinal push is that it still seems very cut off from people who really need it.
Yeah, even with the, I would think even with the CBD and hemp, there's sort of some limitations in that at this point. And the other side,
100%.
and I don't know how you've had to deal with this in Charleston. You say your business is um, the hemp flower sales has been an issue throughout the state. Um, I've been told a county by county decision more so. But ever since Chief Keel and Attorney General Wilson uh, had had drafted that opinion letter last year about raw hemp or hemp flower being raw unprocessed hemp, and that it should be illegal and only possessible by people with processors licenses or growers licenses. Um, that sort of got back down. Even Tom Davis, I saw, had sort of stood up saying about the at least 0.3% THC levels, and it's written into the bill. It should be legal. But I've seen that kind of rolled back in Charleston, but I've also heard some information that other county CBD shops still do have issues with selling hemp flower. Do you have any information or insight on that?
What I will say is that that's been something I have been researching heavily because that was my number one question. I actually called the Department of Agriculture for SC, and in the very beginning, it feels like forever ago, but it was only earlier this year. And I said, hey, pretty much what's the deal with smokable hemp? And I was told, they're very adamant about, well, it's not you can't do that here in South Carolina because we can't tell the difference between marijuana and hemp. And I said, well, that's not very true because when we send our hemp off to be tested, we get all those cannabinoids, like we get all of that. So what they then said, you could tell they didn't really want to say this, but it's up to the municipalities, right? And so my response was, well, there's three CBD shops on the same street that I'm on, and they all got smokable hemp. And that's all that was said, was that it's up to law enforcement, it's up to the municipalities. So for us, we're, teetering this fine line of, okay, so what do we do? And what we keep getting told is, well, have a good relationship with the police. And I'm like, well, that's, what a time to be alive. What a time.
Yeah, and then even for people on the street at this point, if they have hemp in their pocket, the smokable hemp, it could be, and that's just something I've been saying for quite a while. There's going to get to be a push comes to shove situation with this at some point. Now, I also understand that Charleston itself, the police department in Charleston, has deprioritized arresting people for cannabis or trying to do more of a uh, what's the right way to phrase it? To giving you in essence, a ticket. It's not decriminalization because the ticket. I was just watching another video on that. That was one I was going to suggest for upcoming conversation. Um, in essence, if you pay that ticket, you're pleading guilty to a misdemeanor cannabis conviction, and you carry that record along behind you, and all the uh, other consequences that come along with that. You know, and so
Absolutely. And I don't mean to hog the time, you guys, but I'm just really excited to be talking to y'all.
I love the input. Thank you.
Yeah, it really has been something that, and I'll be extremely transparent. This is a Black owned business, and I will be real with you guys. Sometimes it concerns me because with the hemp flower, when we decide, do we want to put hemp flower on our shelves, I do get concerned that, race will play a part in that, because all of the other businesses down the street that are hemp businesses and CBD businesses are not Black owned businesses, and we're going to be on the other side of the street. And I'm just very curious to see what kind of, interaction we will have, especially because, if you're familiar with King Street, it's right there kind of in the heart of downtown. And so we're going
Hmm.
to be on the other side of King Street, more so like Upper King Street. And there are no CBD shops or anything. We'll be the first ones over there. And
And
so
to
these
see if you
kind
get any extra attention from law
exact
enforcement or something like
exactly.
that.
When I know that just down the street, I can a stone's throw away, there are, other businesses. So it's something that these gray areas, especially when let's just be real about the world. When you step into the world of racial disparities, you're like, okay, well, let's see what happens 2 blocks down the street, So it's very interesting.
Absolutely.
Very
Um,
interesting.
and I have seen other reports about just the city of Charleston. I think the city of Charleston was a little better than the state average on their racial disparity of marijuana arrests. I believe they were at a 3.2 times more likely to be arrested if you were a person of color than a white person,
Right.
versus the national average of, or state average of 3.5. But it wasn't a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I know which stat you're talking about. And yeah.
And and like I say, it's just part of fighting for changing marijuana laws, for me anyway, in my position, is fighting for a lot of other civil rights issues. It's not just, hey, we want to sit and smoke weed, or we want it for sick people, or it's like, it's a right, and it's a right that everybody should have, not just you kind of, to me, I felt keyed on it, talking about this legislation. I've got, we're talking about on the Compassionate Care Act. Not all people of color can afford health care. And so, yeah, they make it legal for people who can afford the health care. And uh, I follow. I moved to Charleston from Pennsylvania a little less than 5 years ago. It was still completely illegal in Pennsylvania when I left the state. They, not long after I moved out of the state, they went medical, and I am involved in a couple of. I follow a couple of groups on uh, Facebook that are still up in Pennsylvania, and I will hear people come on every now and again. I've got to renew my card, and this, I think it's $250 approximately to get the renewal. It's like, I, and especially with the pandemic and people having trouble with work, it's like, and you hear it often with people on fixed incomes too. Do I my medicine? Do I pay my rent? Do I eat? Um, all those kinds of things, and it's. Uh, and that's with all healthcare. That's where I mean, I could go on and get
Agreed.
way off on a tangent and start talking about healthcare for all, but that's not where I'm kind of going right now. Um,
Hey,
I'm
Vaughn,
gonna kind.
I think that it's a county by county basis. So you want to be in good with your local sheriff.
Yep, that is definitely what I was told, and I thank you for reaffirming it, because that is something that is just that's always at the top of the to do list. That's kind of, I think we were also at one point in time given the advice to also just let law enforcement know that, hey, we exist and we're here. I guess kind of like getting kind of a step ahead to say, hey, I'm not hiding anything, I'm right here, and things like that. So yes, thank you for that, because that just reaffirming. Thank you.
Well, what happened in the upstate, they had these big giant glass jars showing off all these buds, and that's what was confiscated. So if you're going to show them, I would suggest a small glass jar, not something that was very expensive. That's for sure.
Yes, very good advice too. Thank you. Yeah.
And with that reference to sheriffs, I do want to sort of mention that there are sheriff's races. There is a sheriff's race in Charleston County. I have not contacted Kristen Graziano, who is the candidate running against the incumbent here in Charleston, to ask her position yet, although uh, I feel that that's something important. It's also not something that we have on our national voter guide. Um, as some of you may know, we've been pushing the past couple of weeks, and we'll be pushing for another week or two, reaching out to legislators to answer the candidate questionnaire on their position on marijuana. Um, I have been getting some follow up. I have been getting some response, and I have been getting a few people to be active on sending out the questionnaire. We've actually drafted a couple of I want to say prod posts to put out there to get some more people to get active with sharing that questionnaire with their legislators. Matter of fact, just today I heard back from another legislator. Let's see if I have that one handy. Um, Saying that they had completed the questionnaire and let them know if they've got any other questions. Or it wasn't a legislator; it was a candidate. Um, and also on that, my understanding is that database for the Smoke the Vote voter guide is only updated once a week on a Sunday evening. Um,
We got
so
a
there,
problem in there, Scott. I got to ask you about that on
well, that's
the
supposed to
voter
be
guide.
updated. That's supposed to be updated every Sunday night. So I'm going to check it tomorrow to see if all the updates connected or what updates connected, because there are some issues with that voter
How
guide.
how does Sandy Sen, who is like the chief negative, uh, she's the pawn of Mark Heel, who just also happens to be her biggest client, is representing SLED. How does she have a C grade and not an F? I'm dumbfounded. She's the one who was insisting that the medical program would mostly benefit males 18 to 25 who are pretending to have back pain or something like that. If you heard the hearing, she's the one saying no smoking, and the only thing that should be allowed is a dispenser, kind of like for asthma, because she claimed there's no dosages, so it has to be like how many presses of a asthma type inhaler.
Well, I'm not sure how old your response from her was. I'm basing, first off, those gradings are done based on a rubric, and it's not like she's calling for mandatory or jail time for everything. That would definitely give her an F grade type of thing.
She, she
She
she's against medical. She claims it's all a farce, and
Again,
that
I'm not sure how old your information is. I'm basing it on a response that I got from her within the past 2 weeks. Um, and so that's what some of that is based on. It used to be, she would always tell me only if it has FDA approval. It has to have FDA approval. And yes, I've heard her saying it's young people, blah, 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 which she sort of echoed in this one. Her comment most recently was not a claim of needing FDA approval anymore, but that she supported it for medical reasons. Um, but again, she did, as you mentioned, if some states they seem to have a heavy user base in the you know younger ages. I forget what range she said, the 18 to 25 or whatever she mentioned. Um, and if you're going to have that, you might as well just legalize it all together. Which, to me, I went, well, hell, okay, we'll legalize it all.
she's trying to trick you, Scott. Okay, we don't want to fall for that. And she
My
said we'd have to
Mind you,
do all these.
I want to see Zandy voted out. I'm in her district. I want to see her voted out.
But we cannot
San,
have her having a C. She should be an F. And if we were going to give her a break intentionally, it would be a D, not a
well,
C.
again, I have a formula I have to follow.
I
She
will
follow.
complain to National about that. So I'm warning you. Okay,
Well,
please.
well, then talk to National. It's their guidelines that are followed, and that's why she has
We
a C.
we have to point out that she's the arch nemesis. That she's a puppet of Mark Keel, and she shouldn't even be allowed to be on the medical committee. Think about it. Her law firm probably Sled is probably her one and only client. Okay, it's like multiple six figures, and she is doing whatever Mark Keel wants because he's not a legislator himself. So I was shocked to see a C in there. I really was. It's like, oh my God, what happened?
Well, like I say, I didn't develop the guidelines for it. You can find the guidelines on NORML's national site, and their guidelines are basically for federal level, and then they have a little short paragraph at the bottom that the
But
the
Scott,
the
she's the Reefer
local levels
Madness
basically follow that.
spokesperson in this whole thing. Okay, we don't need Reefer Madness. If she wanted, there had to be A, B, C, D, E, and F before she would consider voting for the bill. So she has never said that she's in favor of the medical bill. You got to realize that. Now maybe some of this new paperwork to get a better grade from NORML is hedging or being deceptive, but she has never said she's in favor of the medical bill. Not to my knowledge, it's never been seen. And you got to look in her newsletters. That's where she gives herself away as a big time prohibitionist.
Well, Bob, it's 170 different state districts or state and house districts there. You're going off about one of them. We already hope that Sam Scarden, I believe his name is, who's running against her, kicks her out. And then hopefully we don't have to worry about Attorney Sen anymore, because that's what I'll call her. She's more of an attorney for law enforcement. I agree
Yeah,
with
she's
you
in
on
my
it.
district, so I guess that's why she's been representing me, and
I understand
that
the
should
raw
explain it.
I understand the raw nerve on Senator Sen. I absolutely do. I am not a fan at all myself, uh, and and it's not just her marijuana issues that I dislike about some of her. She's just not one of my favorite people and not one of my favorite legislators, and I don't necessarily agree with her politics. But on the same line, there's some other legislators that I do see backing the South Carolina Compassionate Care Act, and I also don't like some of their other politics or some of their other positions on things. Some of you may know I'm sort of a little bit of an evangelical atheist, and living in the Bible Belt, when I hear legislators talking about religious stuff over and over and over again on their Facebook pages, it kind of gets a little stuck in my craw. But that is what it is. Again, many of you also know I'm pretty much an issue voter, and if it's going to move the marijuana issue forward, and they, somebody in my district, and I'm going to vote for the one that supports cannabis more in most cases. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I can't always be a one issue voter on some things, but that's how I tend to lean. Um,
Scott, I have a really quick question for you that
yes.
you might not be aware of. But I know at the very beginning of the video, sorry, kind of diverting back to the video that we had been talking about. I found it kind of funny that they were touting the fact that this is the most strictly regulated medical cannabis bill that they're trying to pass. And it kept being mentioned that that is that way because it's what South Carolinians want. And they kept mentioning some poll where it said 70 to 80% of people who live in South Carolina want medical, but also 70 to 80% do not want recreational. And I was a little bit confused about that. And I'm curious when that poll had happened.
I'm kind of curious, but I'm glad you brought that one up.
It was
because that was
2016. The poll from I'm trying to think of the school, Rock Hill.
the state paper had did a poll. I remember that one was big. A school in Rock Hill did one. Because he's talking about some sort of poll or some sort of information where Like 80% in the state were for medical, but the same amount were against recreational, and
It was
that number
Winthrop.
just
That's what it was. Winthrop.
a Winthrop survey or
Winthrop University survey,
okay, I'm gonna jot
2016.
that
So
down.
that's ancient by today's standards.
Well, especially when it talks about something like cannabis that's been shifting so quickly. Um, yeah, I'm gonna make a note of that. See if I can find more on that. Also, Bob, I want to send you a link here real quick. I'm gonna post it down here for everybody in the chat window. Um, I
Yeah,
saw you.
Teresa's not here because the Braves are on right now. Sorry. So that's
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna rename you Bob. Look at that. I've got the power to do that. I am going to share this link with everyone if you like to see it. But Bob, this one specifically, I'm kind of sharing out with you because you had commented on one of the promo posts for this about why don't we just go and um, revive the 1980 South Carolina Controlled Substances Research Act. And this was one that Compassionate SC had posted, looks like a couple years back, 2018. Um, and it talks about that very thing, the Controlled Substances Therapeutic Research Act, um, and some of the, I guess, stumbling blocks on why that would be challenging. Um, One of the ones that I kind of note right off the bat on it is it would require approval by the FDA, the DEA, the NIDA, NIH, and the DOJ. Apparently, that's written into that legislation somehow, and that's only kind of I only briefly read over this, but I kind of wanted to put that out there only because you raising the question made me kind of wonder. And you've raised this one a number of times. Um, what is the feasibility of actually moving in that direction? Um, and getting approval from those other organizations. I just see a real challenge.
I think we can just reshape it, put amendments in there, and the problem with the current setup with the current bill, setting up dispensaries. If you're going to go to the expense of setting up dispensaries and all that goes with it, and you're only going to sell low THC oil that they really, would like to have dispensed in a asthma type inhaler, no flower. I mean, you wouldn't be able to sell hemp flower, I guess.
did they
And
actually take flour out of the bill? I haven't
yes, it
reread
got
the bill
worse
yet.
and worse and worse. It got more and more restrictive when it really should have been going the other way. And when you're trying to get legislation through, you should have some asking for more than what you really want or need, and then hopefully getting something. But in this case, there was no cards left to play, uh, and you know, having a 5-year felony. We had a nurse testify for what I sometimes call Jill's bill, when it would really be Tom's bill more, I guess, or Jill and Tom, whatever. But to have where a nurse is in a scenario, let's say it's in an old folks home, which there's all kinds of restrictions before that could happen too. But just say there's a patient and a roommate, and the nurse gives a is helping the patient, and the roommate says, "Hey, I'd like to try a puff of that or something like that." Well,
Hmm.
if something as simple as that were to
That's a
happen,
diversion from the medical program for recreational use. Is
well, for one thing, we ought to try and maybe you say
what
non-medical.
what's
I
this?
think
Let me see that.
non-medical instead of recreational is very might be beneficial to the reform movement. But what
A
we
lot
could
a
do,
lot used the phrase adult use.
right?
More so than non-medical.
Or you could say non-medical proceeds, like where that would go. But anyway, what we could do is that's very restrictive. It's what passed in '80 is almost like a dying cancer situation, where a patient as a last resort thing, kind of like the right to try now. But uh, what could be done? The source of supply was from the federal government. So if that's impossible, and the whole federal government was actually shut down, that farm where it was specified for it to come from. But why not let those patients, if they're approved, to grow 2 of their own plants? And
Well, my hope is now this is me, is that with an election coming up, with getting more and more candidates openly saying they support cannabis, hopefully educating the voters in our state to get active and get out and vote. Um, we can change for the legislators, because the problem I see with South Carolina is not the voters, it's not the people. The people want to move forward with marijuana law reform, and many of them want to move forward. I mean, many want to move forward for medical purposes, and I still think a large majority want to move forward with full decriminalization, and adult use. Stop locking people up. Stop wasting resources for something that's safer than alcohol and safer than tobacco. Um, and that we need to, in this process, then find another legislator to write us a better bill than Tom's bill, because there's two things I see with Tom's bill now. One, Peter McCoy is no longer in a position to write a companion bill to go along with it. Uh, and he had a law enforcement background. I believe a big part of the reason that Peter McCoy was sort of chosen, besides the fact that he found relief for his daughter with cannabis, was that he also had this law enforcement background as a prosecutor and I believe a district attorney. I don't know what all his background in that is, but as a prosecuting attorney, um, that I was thinking they kind of brought him as maybe a way to get some additional law enforcement help, support behind them. Uh,
hey, Scott, one of the legislators
see right now he's been
who came up wanted to talk about the bill was my House representative Leon Stravonakis. He might remember he ran for mayor, I guess, an election or two back. But he might be able to do something in the House, because he was coming up to speak on the bill when it got canceled that time.
mm-hmm.
So he would be worth looking into on that. And I want to also say that, Scott, when we're talking about like, for example, the CBD, not I'm sorry, the hemp ban. It'd be nice if we could figure out which counties, there's 46 of them, allow it and which ones don't. Nobody knows that information. That would be something like a statewide NORML thing that we could do. And so somebody like Vaughn doesn't have to do stuff on her own. Which, Vaughn, tell us where your CBD store is, so we all know at least. Give yourself a plug too. I'm sure Scott won't mind.
Oh yeah, that doesn't make me nervous at all. No, I no, we're happy about it. We're exciting. Opening a business is exciting and nerve wracking all at the same time. So we're on King Street, 1072 King Street, Suite E. And we haven't officially opened our doors yet because COVID, but that's okay. We are taking our time with it and just doing some design things right now, but we are open for business. We actually have a restock that's happening tomorrow. So MrBCBD.com is where you can see what we have in terms of inventory. Website's still being built, but the prices are up there. The inventory's up there. And so that's where you can find us. You can follow us on Instagram at MrBCBD as well.
Now you got me looking real quick. How is Mr. B? That's just the letter B?
Yep, Mr. MisterBCBD. That's .com, and also Instagram is where we are right now.
I tried to abbreviate Mr.
I also do the digital marketing, so be gracious.
Vaughn, do you wouldn't have a problem having a petition there for people to sign, would you? Maybe If
Say,
you're in Charleston County,
say that one more time. You kind of broke up a little bit.
we have a petition for decrim in the city of Charleston. And I don't know if we're doing the county one or not, Scott, but if you could have people who coming into your store, that might even that bring some folks into you whenever you do open or whatever.
I tell you what, I do love a good decriminalization petition. So definitely, I'd love to get some more information on that and talk with my my partner husband about it as well. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted on that, Vaughn. Right now, our petitions, because we haven't been out and able to actually physically collect either, we've sort of put our petition collection initiative on pause. Um, while we're kind of getting through the election. My main focus right now is again getting this voter guide together pre-election, and then of course trying to get people registered to vote pre-election, and then getting the get out and voting on November 3rd. Um, and hopefully change our legislature. Hopefully get ourselves a whole lot more um, you know, cannabis supporting legislators out there. Um, but as soon as the elections are over, I am planning on uh, revamping and getting these petition programs going. We need to collect about 15,000 signatures from the city of Charleston from registered voters that are residents of the city. And if we do that, we can get a decrim ordinance on the ballot for the voters to decide. Um, and we have three of them right now, one for the city of Folly Beach, one for the town of James Island over here, and one for the city of Charleston. And city of Charleston's kind of our biggest um, target at this point. Um, and this sort of connects a little bit. Just this past Thursday, I happened to make it over to the first meeting of SSDP at the College of Charleston. SSDP is the Students for Sensible Drug Policy. The students actually earn credits of some sort for collecting signatures on petitions. Um, we had things ramped up kind of last February as we were getting into February earlier this year to organize with the students of SSDP and get down and hit Folly while it was non-tourist season. We could actually find the voters amongst the tourists. Um, and then we got hit with COVID and the pandemic and the school shut down. And this has been my first interaction with any of the students since then. Um, and so we are hoping to um, get reestablished with them and get this coalition with the students going and get them out there helping us as well to collect signatures both in the city, mainly in the city for the students because they're right there, right downtown. Um, I'll keep you posted on that stuff as we do move forward because as much as we all sort of want to see in our vision and our dreams a sensible medical marijuana program in South Carolina, uh, a lot of us are having a hard time visualizing a legislator or legislators that are going to take us there. I truly believe that if we don't start decriminalizing at a municipal level, um, that's going to be the key to me is to decriminalize it at a municipal level. That's going to show our legislators and indicate to our legislators that we as voters are serious about this and that we want them to actually act on their behalf. There's a lot of people out there, insisting on changing the laws, and it just seems that the legislators keep turning. A lot of them are turning a deaf ear. I do have to sort of roll that back a little on watching this video. Uh, excuse me. There were a number of legislators back there. I mean, actually, one of the ones that I mentioned that I'm not a big fan of that, does their religious stuff is in the background on this video here of the introduction. Um, there is support in the state, but there's just not enough. And again, I'm seeing with the trying to collect the data for the database, they're not always willing to just answer the question for me as the director of NORML. they'd be more willing in many cases to answer the question for their own constituents in their own communities. And so this week is one of the big pushes we will be pushing for people in specific towns. I'm kind of going and picking large population towns throughout the state and saying, hey, Greenville, nobody in Greenville's written to our legislators yet. Would you go ahead and write to them and ask them to fill out this questionnaire? I can actually see that on the back end, what town people have signed in on. I wish they gave me a county breakdown. That would be a little easier. But we want to push that. We want to try and get our legislators to answer the question so we know their positions on marijuana. And then we want to let the voters know that we've gotten some answers back and to vote accordingly and get them out to vote. I know this is probably a little off topic, but talking about voting, we know that there's generally a low turnout of registered voters. I think the numbers are generally about 17% or so. Uh, Depending on if it's a primary or a general, there can be some variations to get better turnouts in general at the general elections. But I think even then, it's a struggle to see 20% of registered voters turning out. That means that those non-voters are the ones that are kind of making the decisions. So if you've got people that you know that just are registered to vote but don't get out and vote regularly and you know they support the cause, we're going to ask you to sort of prod them and ask them to come out and vote this cycle. November 3rd is going to be a crazy election, is my understanding. I'm working the polls that day, so I've already got my. And I happen to work in a precinct that's not the precinct I'm allowed to vote in, so I have to do the mail-in absentee type vote. So I've already got my request in for that. And just this past week, the governor has, I guess, allowed all registered voters to vote absentee mail-in without having to care about the qualifying questions that South Carolina generally asks. I think they ask 6 or 7 questions, and it's my understanding that South Carolina is the only state that asks those questions. Um, but that they've sort of rolled that back again with the pandemic, giving more people the opportunity to vote by mail. And for folks that are concerned with voter fraud, I heard one statement that there hasn't been a case of voter fraud in South Carolina in over 20 years. Uh, I went and I researched it, and I found one in about 2008 where somebody had taken I guess, all the voter ballot, mail-in ballots that came to their household, and they filled them all in and mailed them for the family. Um, and so, one in 20 years, I don't know. I don't find it a big issue considering the number of people that should be getting out there and voting. So get out there and vote. Otherwise, I see we're hitting 8 o'clock. I can't believe we rambled this long, and I'm glad we had so many of you come out and join us tonight. Um, Before I kind of wrap it up, does anybody else have anything else they want to sort of input about what they'd like to see in the medical marijuana bill and how they think we might want to move forward?
Scott, I wanted to mention there has not been a single vote for, in effect, the existing Compassionate Care Act bill on the South Carolina Cannabis Forum, group on Facebook. I find that pretty amazing, and maybe it explains why there was so, lackluster support as far as nobody showing up as a witness the last day they had a hearing. It was pretty embarrassing.
Oh, that poll you have on there. I don't think I know the numbers on that, but nobody said we should really push for moving the Compassionate Care Act forward. That's it. That is interesting.
Well, I had one version where they would add in smoking and flower would be allowed. That was popular, but the as is, which did not allow those, hasn't got a single vote.
Well, and again, that's something I have mentioned a couple of times in some of our conversations. I think one of the big issues in South Carolina is not just going to be getting a legislator to draft a bill that we're happier with, because normal position is that the Capacity Care Act, although we support it, it needs amending, and it needs a drastic amending since they're taking out smokable flowers and such like that. But I'd really rather them just take an existing bill that's working in another state that is successful in another state and sort of duplicate that process here, and finding a legislator that'll push that, because really I'm not a supporter overall. I mean, we technically as an organization support medical marijuana and the Capacity Care Act with reservation. But I think we need a much better bill. That being said, we also need legislators that are going to support the bill. It's not so much an issue of finding legislators, legislators later that get voted in November to go, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and push this, draft that bill just the way you want me to. It also needs to be a legislator that has some standing, I guess you want to say, to be able to garner some other legislators get co-sign legislation to get it forward. But I don't want to dwell on it too much. Anybody else want to give me a little bit of last minute insight? All right, I'm not going to hang you on here the rest of the night. I want to see you go spend time with your loved ones. So all I want to say is I will be back here again next Sunday at 7 p.m. for the South Carolina Cannabis Conversation. You can find me right here. If you need to contact me, you can email me at lowcountrynormal@gmail.com. Find our website at normalsc.org. I have not made a specific link to kind of view for next week, but I probably am going to be moving forward a video that talks about decriminalization in South Carolina, and let's talk about that. If pushing and passing a medical bill ain't happening, maybe pushing a decrim bill is going to be more beneficial to the majority of South Carolinians. I don't know, but let's go talk about that one next week. With that, I'm going to say goodnight. Thank you again for joining me. Take care, y'all. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.